What is innovation? And more importantly, how do we innovate? I think innovation is sometimes a misunderstood concept because people think it's something that we're born with or that we're given. But really, innovation is something that we learn from our life experiences and from our own education. And so what is innovation? Innovation is simply the continual generation of new value. It's actually quite simple. And I have a formula that I use to kind of put this in concrete footing. To innovate, we need to discover unseen opportunities for value and solve high-impact problems. Think about it. Where did the ideas for the iPad come from? When did you first realize that you needed to tweet? When did you realize that you needed two cameras on your phone? One to take a picture of somebody else and one to take a picture of yourself. These are all examples of opportunities that most of us never saw. And what do I mean by high-impact problems? These are the problems that, if you could solve, they would transform or disrupt the market. So how is it that we discover these unseen opportunities for value and solve these high-impact problems? Well, I've had the pleasure of working with some of the smartest and most talented people in the world, and also been lucky enough to meet and work with some of the most innovative people in the world. And what's interesting is that they're not the same set of people. Being smart or talented is great, but it doesn't make you innovative. Being innovative is something that comes about through your approach to your business, your career, and to your life. Innovators simply approach the world in a different way than non-innovators. And what I've noticed is there's really three areas that innovators look at the world differently. The first is that innovators make connections that others don't. They bring together disparate ideas that we just didn't see. The average person just doesn't see putting together. The one example that I like to use is of a salesman in the late 20s who worked for Kraft Foods. Kraft had just invented a new powdered cheddar cheese, but couldn't figure out how to sell it. But the salesman realized that the Depression was coming on, and what people wanted was a good, cheap, wholesome meal. And he realized that the technology that Kraft had come out with, powdered cheese, could actually form that. And one time he was setting up a sales demonstration. He got a bunch of boxes of macaroni, and he rubber banded the packets of cheese to them, and he invented Kraft macaroni and cheese, one of the world's most popular dinners. All of this from connecting the idea of a good, wholesome meal with the powdered cheddar cheese. The second aspect that I find that innovators approach the world differently is that they look for and solve key problems. I call these keystone problems. These are the problems that separate nascent technology from becoming a market leader. One example that I use a lot is in the 60s, the 8-track tape player was the dominant recording media. You could get it on your Learjet, in your Rolls Royce, and in your Bentley. At the same time, the cassette was there, just nobody was buying it. The problem was the sound quality was poor. And it wasn't until the late 60s when a company called Dolby introduced Dolby B. And that revolutionized the sound quality of the cassette, and it totally disrupted the 8-track market. Totally took it over. Finding these keystone problems and solving them allows innovators to totally disrupt the market, to introduce things that we had never thought possible because they required a very hard problem to be solved. And most of these innovators solve these hard problems by thinking flexibly, by thinking sort of multidimensionally in many different ways. One example I use of that is in the early 70s, Pepsi was trying to figure out how to sell more Pepsi. When I first heard about that, I'm like, okay, you need to sell more bottles of Pepsi. But no, that's not how Pepsi thought about it. They thought about, how do I sell more Pepsi? Total amount, volume of Pepsi. And they invented the 2-liter bottle so they could sell one bottle with a lot more Pepsi in it. Pretty innovative. And the third piece that I think is probably the simplest and maybe the most unique and valuable about the way innovators approach is innovators simply ask different questions. To give you an example, in the year 2000, Nintendo was falling behind Sony and Microsoft in the video game market. And Shigeru Miyamoto, who had invented Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers, was tasked with figuring out a way to bring Nintendo back. And Shigeru Miyamoto He asked one simple question. Who are the non-players? Who are the non-game players, and how do we get those to play? And what Shigeru figured out is that the number one non-game player was mom. And if you could get mom to play a video game, you'd open up an entirely new market. And that's how he invented the Nintendo Wii. Innovators just look at the world in a slightly different way. And you and I can learn to look at the world in that way so that we can discover unseen opportunities for value in our companies and in our careers, so that we can solve high-impact problems and disrupt the market. Come join me in learning more about innovation and how you can transform your careers and your businesses.